Next up, I would like to introduce our next panel, Oculus VR Design, Designing with Virtual Teams, which is going to be moderated by our very own Professor Wila Eason. We have joining us the product team from Mattel. Joining us will be Ed Duncan, Burr Lennon, and Ben Hitmar. They will all be joining via Zoom, and one of them will be joining in a very special capacity.
Can you hear me?
We hear you now.
Okay, and I'm looking for Ed. Are both of you on screen? Can we see both at the same time? I don't know if our tech is allowing that.
I'm here. I don't know if you can see me.
Now I can see you. Can you see me?
Yes, we can see you.
Okay, terrific. So before I introduce our guest from Mattel, I'd like to say how I came to know Mattel. Back in 1985, my son said he couldn't be a superhero because he was Black. And I said, okay, we'll go buy you a Black superhero toy. Couldn't find any on the market. And that led me to create Sunman, which was the first Black superhero action toy. And last year, Ed reached out to me from Mattel. Ed is the head of design for Mattel and has an extensive background, which I will tell you a little bit about. And we entered into a licensing agreement so that now my toys, Sunman is a part of the Masters of the Universe toy line. So it's out Target, Walmart, and Amazon. Now, a little bit about the design aspect that we're going to talk about. As I said, Ed is Senior VP of Design at Mattel, with responsibility for action figures, games, and plush design, as well as overseeing Mattel's inventor relations team. And prior to joining Mattel, he led design for Takara, Tomi's efforts outside of Japan, had several jobs on Disney Consumer Products, Toys team, and worked as a designer or design lead at Fisher-Price and Hasbro. And Bear, who is joining us, Lennon, is a staff designer at Mattel with a BFA in toy design from Otis College of Art and Design. And for over 18 years with Mattel, he's invented, designed, and built products for brands such as Batman, Superman, Max Steel, Pixar Cars, Matchbox, Minions, among many others. His design process includes the leading technologies to further design and development, such as, and this is software for you designers you may know about, Rhino, Mayo, Freeform, ZBrush, and Gravity Sketch, which was mentioned in our earlier presentation today. And coming to us as an avatar, actually, in a demo they're going to show, is Ben Hitmar. He's an industrial designer with over 23 years in the industry of making toys. He has a BFA in industrial design, as well from Cleveland Institute of Arts. And he's worked for Hasbro and worked on Transformers, Batman, Pokemon, G.I. Joe, Z-Box, and Nerf. So this is the team that we have here with us today, and we're going to talk about how design works in a virtual reality and what's involved with it. So I just want to kick off with a few questions here for you designers. What basic things or functions can you do with the team in the metaverse using the Oculus, which I'll grab a hold of now?
You can do a lot. I think like Bear can talk to more of the technical applications, and we've got a nice video to show to talk about that. But the thing about making toys is the first function of a toy as a consumer product is to be fun to a child. And to achieve that, sometimes you have to be engaged in a fun conversation. And I think a lot of the new tools that the Oculus has provided us, especially during the time of COVID, but now starting to have some resilience beyond that moment in time, is the ability to interact in a more organic, natural way and in a 3D environment. That's the other thing, is you're making a 3D object. And when I was a designer a million years ago, I'm old enough that we didn't do a lot on computers, and I started out doing hand orthographic drawings. You do a front, a back, and a side, and they would make your 3D out of that, or you would build it out of a, real materials as a model. And one thing I was always surprised by, but then became never surprised by, was if you are drawing something from all the different sides, when you get it into 3D, there's always a view you couldn't envision in all the different orthographic angles of it. And you're always dealing with some resolution that just couldn't happen while you're in the 2D world. And so these new tools allow us to design in the 3D world and even draw in the 3D world. But like, so Bear interacts more with the products being created, and I have a lot more of my job being about communication. And I think that's the other part of it. There's things like brainstorms and just even my team meetings that are enhanced by being in this sort of environment versus a Zoom or emails or any other way that we've been able to communicate. So I'll let Bear talk a little bit more about the tools that for designers as he uses them, and then I can throw the video up that we made if when Bear thinks that's appropriate.
Sure. So yeah, we spend a fair amount of time in design. We can, bounce ideas off each other, brainstorm, just bring in a ton of reference to look at, and just create spaces that really make brainstorming and designing a fluid process, even though no one's within 500 miles of each other. So, and then from there can pretty quickly get to a resolved model that you can experience either in one VR program or another, or in reality. I think that's probably a decent segue to the video that you have, if you want to share that.
All right, I'm going to put it up now. Can you guys see my video?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
All right, we start our process in VR, reviewing our inspiration, and we're going to go ahead and look through, pick out things we like, we'll decide what we want to go after in this particular project. So me and Ben here discuss what we're going to bring into VR sculpting.
And at this moment, they're in a program called Spatial, and they're in a room together. And the figure on the right is an avatar of Ben. The figure on the left is an avatar of Bear. And there must be a third person that's videoing it, that you're looking through their eyes of it. And the thing about these virtual conversation spaces is they're good places to talk about product. But when you think about it relative to a Zoom call, if you're the person wearing the visor looking at Ben and Bear, when Bear speaks, his voice comes from that direction. When Ben speaks, his voice comes from his direction too. And you're able to have a more organic flowing conversation. People can cross-talk and you can tell who's talking, and it really enhances the interaction of this design dialogue that they're having.
And from there, I'm going to go ahead, jump into 3D, set up the room for myself to sculpt in, and then just get quickly into drawing it out. So grab the piece we liked.
Now we're in Gravity Sketch now.
Want to start from, scale it into place. From here, just go ahead and start drawing it out, almost like you're drawing an Illustrator, except for in 3D. Once you've got it drawn out the way you like it, with some volume, go ahead, throw some surfaces on it, then just adjust those surfaces quickly to get them ready.
Another interesting thing about Gravity Sketch as a program, besides being able to create things in a 3D environment, it once again goes to the collaboration component that I talk about. So you can have multiple people in this room watching and participating in the creation of this design, which is really interesting. Like if you're drawing on your Wacom tablet or something, you could always share your screen, but this is almost the equivalent of being in a design studio, and I could be in there as a design leader watching them design and making comments real time or pointing to things in 3D. It's a really interesting way to do this.
For printing, once you've got your general volume together, add some secondary detail to it. And once that's done, of course, some last details.
And you're showing
Cool.
how you're drawing now.
So from there you can just adjust your materials and review it in VR if you'd like to. Or if you're a more traditional type and you want to go to tools where you actually use reality, you can go ahead, look at it there, go ahead and print a copy of it out, and then take a look at it in actual reality if you're still into that.
And that's the character that they were working on right here in real reality here.
And like in that program Spatial, you can import files of product into that and talk about them, but you can do things like stretch them out and scale them big. So like an example is I've got a conference room that a virtual conference room that I have meetings in sometimes. And I've got a dinosaur toy we did for our Jurassic line, and I have it scaled up so that it is the size of a real dinosaur. And then you can take that, and just like any other digital asset, you can hit a button and duplicate it. And then there's a button you can hit relative to that image in the room that will then return it to its actual size. So the ability to hold it in the scale that it will be in real life before it exists and talk about it in a room full of people and pass it around while it's still an idea is absolutely invaluable.
Do you feel like you're getting better design? You mentioned being able to see it from angles you wouldn't ever be able to see it from by using VR.
I think it's a tool. I think Bear can speak to whether it makes him a better designer or not. But you know, it's like anything else. There's the old saying, it's a poor craftsman who blames his tools. Like good designers make good use of it, and bad designers make bad use of it.
Yeah, I'd say well, it's an interesting time because there's a lot of tools that are happening right now. Like people will say at this point, you have to sort of think of AI as the new Google search, right? Because all those images that we looked at the beginning, I made in about an hour and a half at home, and then we reviewed them to pick out things we liked. And then from there, the resolution of things you can build in 3D, especially in an Oculus, is relatively low currently, but again, that's all moving so quickly. By the time we're able to do things that are a little bit higher resolution, higher detail, then that gap between reality and virtual reality gets more narrow. So
I mean, I think where I started to really lean into it was during COVID, like when we were locked in our homes, and Zoom and Microsoft Teams were really the options. This was a much better option, and being able to see things in 3D and talk about them in a place where you felt like you were almost in the same room had all kinds of benefits. And then there's other things like one of the teams I manage is games, and of all my design teams, they were the ones that suffered the most during COVID because you couldn't play a game, and we ended up having to create some methods to play games virtually. And there was a lengthy exploration about creating games in the virtual space and trying to be able to play them virtually that didn't necessarily pan out, but it had more to do with the complexity of doing it than the viability of it as a solution to the problem. And we still look at it in terms of a way to do things and play games.
You also mentioned that in addition to design, you have the team in there. It's a big collaboration tool. How many people can you have in a room, your virtual room, and how does that work for meetings?
Well, the first time I was in a virtual room talking about a toy, there were 2 or 3 people in there with me, and we were talking about it, and I realized how organic the conversation flow was. And I said, wait a minute, there's a separate thing going on here besides this toy that we should be talking about. And this is a better conversation than a Zoom conversation. So then I asked the team to get some more headsets, and the idea was, let's pressure test this. How many people can we get in a room and have a conversation? And I think we tried 8, and 8 was fine. And then I had a meeting once with 12 people in it, and it started to really choke up and slow down. But I've later found out that there was a problem with the way I had the room set up. I had a bunch of really high res images in the room that were sucking up a lot of memory. And it's like the virtual environment has a finite amount of memory, and the room itself is a part of that. So I believe in a properly set up room that dozen person scenario would have worked. I've never really tried anything bigger than that. And what I've ended up doing is I have a staff of, I have 8 people that directly report into me. And then I have another couple of people that are directors or above that don't directly report into me. And I have them in a staff meeting every week. And that meeting is in spatial. It's a metaverse meeting every week. And what's interesting about it is 2 of the people on my staff are located in Hong Kong, and a third is in Buffalo, New York, and we're in Los Angeles. And those 3 outliers who aren't able to be in the room, you know, especially pre-COVID when we would have that meeting, they would be phoning in and be basically a voice coming out of a box, become people in the room. And especially the Hong Kong guys, they've come to my team since we were doing this, and being able to integrate them into this meeting and have them physically be present in the room and sound as good and clear and crisp as everybody else it's made them feel like more a part of the team. And the problem then just becomes, what time is the meeting? That everybody isn't, nobody's having the meeting in the middle of the night.
Do they all have avatars that look like them in the room?
Yeah, they do. It's funny though, because when some of these programs have updates, it'll glitch up the avatars, and somebody will come in and their avatar will be a different gender than they are, and they didn't realize it was going to happen and would have to go afterwards and change it. But generally everybody's got an avatar that looks like them, and there's different ways you can do it. You can construct one that looks like you, or you can actually import a photo of yourself and it'll texture map it around like a wig head type of blank, which is a little bit creepy, but honestly, even as weird as it is a more organic conversation. And even though we're able to get back in the office, that meeting persists in the metaverse. It just works better, and it incorporates the distant players better. And I have a few other meetings in the metaverse too. There's another meeting I have with a team that it's a smaller team, and it's more of a casual discussion meeting that happens monthly. And that meeting is hosted in a virtual golf program. So it's sort of the virtual version of having a meeting out on the links or something. So we're all putting and talking about the business. It's pretty interesting.
You're putting while you're talking.
Yeah.
Actually playing. It sounds like more fun. Can you also share documents in your metaverse environment?
Yeah, absolutely. The place where I have my staff meeting is in the form of a giant gallery, and every person on my team has a wall that they own and control. And if they have something they want to talk about, like a PowerPoint or a video or a model or drawings or whatever, they can populate their area with that stuff, and it's just sort of this living gallery. But you can bring in all kinds of things. You can bring in MP3s and play music if you want. You can bring in any kind of image, and it's like any other computer version of such things. It really all depends on how well the file sizes are managed. And at a company like Mattel that makes things for mass production, people pass around really high-res images and don't really think about it. And so sometimes people will bring in a giant image and it'll slow down the room. So you have to manage for that. But yeah, you can bring anything in.
Bear, what do you like best about working in the metaverse? Sorry, Ben.
Okay,
No,
I'm sorry. Ed's super loud and you're super quiet on my.
Oh, okay.
here.
Did you hear me?
Oh, there you
Sorry,
go.
I needed the mic up here. I said, what do you like best about working in the metaverse, designing in it?
Honestly, just the sort of freedom of movement, and I like Gravity Sketch because it's so. I mean, they call it Gravity Sketch because they want it to be like a sketching fast type program, but at the same time, it gives you more 3D as well. So you can really get to something that's more resolved than a sketch, but not quite to the point that it's actually a full model that's ready to print. So it just feels like a sort of evolution of communication in that way, if that makes sense.
Another thing you can do in spatial that people, I don't really hear too many people talk about is you can set up real-time subtitles. And so if you have a person in your meeting that doesn't speak the same language as everybody else, you can set it up so that as they talk, their words are appearing above their head translated, and each user gets to choose the language that it's translated to. It's really powerful. And I've never had a meeting in it where I had somebody that needed to depend on that. But with my two Hong Kong employees, we've tested it, and it totally works. It works really well. It's one of those things that, you know, you might be able to avoid getting a translator because it works pretty well.
I should introduce that to the UN. They might be interested. Also, you mentioned that you did a presentation, I guess it's not proprietary, as you mentioned it, to Jurassic Park. And you said it was quite expensive to do it in the display area.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Tactical. Can you talk to how it would have been different had you been able to do it?
So when we have so we have the Jurassic license, and we've had it since I think we got it in 2016, and toys start appearing in 2017 from us on it. And when a toy company gets a license like that, it's a bit of a pageant. Like the movie studio decides that they would like to explore their options, and they put up a request for pitches. And then you as a toy company have to put together your pitch to them to basically say, hey, we're going to be a better partner on this toy line. And those pitches can be quite elaborate, expensive affairs. And since we started messing around in different programs in Oculus in the metaverse, we've built some rooms that almost feel like you're at Disneyland. And the idea of, if you had a pitch, how much cheaper it would be to just supply the people attending the pitch with headsets. And it would depend on, you know, that pressure test of the room. How many people can you really fit in the room? Because for the Jurassic pitch, I think there were 40 attendees, and I'm pretty sure we couldn't fit 40. But on a smaller brand, you know, if you needed to get a dozen people to go down the path of something, it would be infinitely cheaper to buy a dozen headsets and just gift them to the attendees and have them come into some crazy virtual room that you made. And not just the expense of it, the completeness of the experience. It's a pretty I mean, like, it really does feel like you're in Disneyland in some of these rooms that we've made. So getting into the environment of and the mood for the subject that you're talking about helps move the ball forward in anything that you're up to. Plus the whole thing, you know, I can't stress enough that if you're making toys and you're not doing something fun in the process or making somebody smile during it, generally your toys aren't fun enough.
I remember that too. We used to have a lot of fun. The design meetings were off the wall. So
Yeah.
that is a part of the whole process. Why do you think, I mean, you're really advanced, Mattel, in this. Do you know, I mean, I know Hasbro, I don't know about anybody else, but what do you think is the reluctance to embrace this, especially for meetings and to eschew Zoom for these kinds of sessions?
I think it's one of those things where, you know, you look at the adoption in the rest of the world on this, and it's still kind of fringy. And, you know, if you think about, if you were a person that I was going to pitch to, and instead of inviting you to fly to a meeting like would normally happen, I sent you a box and it had a contraption like this in it.
Yeah,
You might be
sent to me.
Yeah, you might be put off by it. Yeah, and that's the other thing is the cost of entry for these devices is you know, between $300 and $500, which, you know, at a corporate level isn't a lot of money. Like just shipping things around sometimes, or getting just a sketch done, could cost you that much if you're not under a lot of circumstances. And being able to transport somebody into another world for such a low price of entry is compelling. And it's something you're not the only person I've sent a headset to, because I had something I wanted to show them that was worth $300 to show them. So I know
another part of it was you guys provided, I forget his name, who walked me through how to use it, because that
Yeah,
was another big part of the adoption.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's just sort of as the world gets closer to adopting this, and I believe last Christmas, a lot of these Oculus headsets went out, and there's a lot more people on it now, and it's starting to become something that people know about and are talking about in the real world a bit more. So as that increases, and Facebook owns this now, so they're putting money behind it. As it becomes a bigger part of society that regular people understand, the adoption of its abilities is going to go up.
Did you want to add anything,
Well,
Bear?
I think that space is also expanding. You know, I think Microsoft's got one coming, Samsung, HTC, I think is doing it. There's a lot of advancement that's going to happen quickly. And I was thinking as Ed was talking, when I was in school, 20 years ago, our teacher was talking about how the old school people were so averse to using a Wacom tablet. And now, at a minimum, you're using a Cintiq, and that was 20 years worth of advancement. And I think this is going to happen quite a bit quicker. But it does seem that we're still at that stage where there's a lot of apprehension for whatever reason.
And Mattel corporately has a strategy about the metaverse, and we're talking outside of that. Like, this is just what we are doing at the company. And, like we have a lot of brands that rely on consumer engagement, and there's a whole team of people that are engaged in figuring out the metaverse for Mattel and how do we maximize our ability to engage with the communities that live about and around our products in that environment. And, just like most companies, there's a strategy on this moving forward, which is another thing that's going to increase adoption. But just in terms of on the ground, people doing stuff in this format, me and Bear are a couple of the people around Mattel that are probably earlier adopters of this, but it's spreading really fast.
Oh, great. I just want to see if there are any questions from the audience. Okay. Do you need to, somebody's going to get you the mic? If you can hold on, we've got it. Back.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
So I guess it's like more for personal use, but like in your free time, like using VR, do you ever play VR chat or Beat Saber to get some sort of idea of, I guess, how to improve your designs?
I do play Beat Saber. I don't use it to get inspired for my job as much. And yeah, I haven't tried VR chat. It's been around a long time, and I know some people who were really into it, but I don't use it, not for work. Trying to think, like I was saying, inspiration I do find in a lot of the new AI stuff is really where there's a whole lot of inspiring inspiration to be found. But yeah, probably not as much in Beat Saber. It's fun though, but
I actually, I play some games on it. I don't play Beat Saber, but there's a few games that I like. And I've spent some time in, what is it called? Horizon Worlds. That's the Facebook metaverse program. And I've met some people that have shown me some applications of games that as you construct and build your worlds in that program, there's a lot of ability to make functioning games. And it kind of goes to that thing I was talking about before, where my games team had a really hard time figuring out how to play and test games during the time of COVID. And I had a lot of conversations with people about the games they were constructing in that world. It was really interesting. So there's stuff out there, and I poke around a bit trying to figure out if there's any application to Mattel for what I see.
I also have another question.
Okay, we have to make it quick because I know. Okay.
All right. So what kind of programs do you think would be good for new beginners to this type of thing? Do you recommend?
well, definitely Gravity Sketch if you're trying to do work in VR. And then if you want to get really cheap, and work on your iPad. You can get like Nomad, Nomad, I think it's Nomad 3D or Nomad, something like that on iPad it's kind of like a free form, I'm sorry, or a ZBrush Lite. And then if you have a little more money, I'd go to ZBrush. That's a much more daunting one to learn, but it's really good for sculpting / drawing type of work.
Gravity Sketch seems to be the go-to design program for an Oculus.
VR. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, Ed and Bear and Ben virtually or as an avatar. We really appreciate you coming to us today and inspiring us all. And as you said, one of the things that you also feel like is stopping people from the adoption is just feeling silly putting this on their head, which is a whole another thing. All right, thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Thanks.